Yes, in a high pressure, stressful situation, it will be harder to find your words and it will be harder to perform. In a way, you should think of that perhaps as your base level. The big mistake a lot of people make, and it's why things like language exchange, conversation classes with a teacher tend to be hideously ineffective, is because those situations are so comfortable and they give us a false impression of our own performance ability, because the teacher is trained to speak very slowly, be very easy to understand. They understand us and we become very comfortable in that situation, and there's no stress involved. And then when we go into the real world and do real things, suddenly stress is applied and our performance ability just drops to almost nothing. And we think that suddenly, oh my God, I'm no good. But actually it's that we were working really in a situation that was kind of like a computer game on cheat mode when we were practicing. So that's why we want to think of high pressure situations as being kind of the main type of way we want to use English. When we think about fluency, most people have a very, very black and white, massively simplistic idea of what fluency actually is. And actually fluency as a concept, as a thing outside of the academic scientific community, really is just not understood at all. And I mean, fluency can mean the same thing as proficiency, and that's what many people mean when they say I want to be fluent in English. What they're actually saying is I want to be proficient in English, and it gets viewed as this kind of single thing. You're fluent or you're not. But actually that's complete rubbish, and fluency really is not like that at all. What we know about fluency from the world of science and applied in psycholinguistics is that fluency is actually it's what we would call, if you're familiar with complex adaptive systems theory, and don't worry if you're not, I'm just kind of digressing a bit here. It's actually what we would call an emergent property, meaning it's actually a combination of multiple things that when they work together generate this thing that we see as being a single thing. This is the important one for your question. We have what we call cognitive load. Now, this is quite an abstract idea, and again, cognitive load is a technical term, but what it essentially means is how your brain is allocating its resources, its energy, its power to all the different things that are going on. So I think the way that I described it the way I did describe it in the session is you can think of it like your computer's RAM. If your computer doesn't have very much RAM, which unfortunately the brain doesn't, surprisingly enough, and you try to run all these different software programs at the same time, none of them are really going to work very well. Whereas if you shut everything down and just allow a single program to do its thing, it'll run quite well. So that's really what we're talking about here. So in high pressure situations where we begin to panic, where we begin to worry, we begin to stress, what's actually happening is we've now got all these extra things happening at the same time that are stealing power. There's also, I mean, it gets very, very complicated. I mean, in stressful situations, a hormone called cortisol is also released, which is kind of the thing that makes you, brings out the adrenaline and gives you the shakes and things like that. And it does have a usage, but when it comes to speaking a language, it's not very useful. And things like that will also kind of block your ability. So that's why that happens in that kind of situation. But the important thing to understand is, one, in higher risk situations, the body has systems, or the brain has systems to deal with those, and that's what we call flow state. And that will allow you to build connections and bits in your brain much faster and much easier. That's why high pressure, high stress situations are so good for fluency building, even if it doesn't feel like it. Even if you feel like, oh my God, I've lost all my words, I'm panicking, I'm stressed, I don't know what to say anymore, it's still going to be more effective for building fluency than a very comfortable situation, because the brain is able to organize, reconnect things much faster and much more efficiently. The other thing you've got to understand is a big part of fluency building then is actually overcoming the panic and the fear and the stress. And unfortunately, it's like anything that is terrifying. Really, the only way to stop being terrified of it is to do more of it. And that's why, you know, they say like people like me, who is absolutely terrified of heights. I cannot stand high places. Like, oh my God, even just thinking about it makes me sick. Well, the best thing for me to do is to go up to high places and get used to it. Strap on a parachute and jump out of a plane. Honestly, it's not going to happen because I ain't that bothered about overcoming that particular fear. But it is the same kind of thing with English. The more you get into these high pressure, high stress situations, the more you are going to learn to deal with it, get used to it, and therefore the less you are going to get stressed, the less you will panic, which in turn means more energy to use for English and therefore a better ability to perform in English. So the very, very short nutshell answer to your question is it's all to do with cognitive load, and a big part of fluency building therefore is learning to reduce cognitive load. Now, if you panic and stress and feel fear to the extent where you are like 100% frozen and paralyzed, well, then what that then also means is we need to go back to perhaps to what we talked about in week 2, where we really work more on that fear side of things. Because if the stress is too high, then you'll never get anything done. So it's a balance of stress, panic, fear management, and also actually using those situations to learn. Does that all make sense, Anna?